Okay, thank you, Mohammed, and thank you, Bill, and thanks for this opportunity.
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you for this opportunity to speak about the situation in Palestine. Mohammed gave quite a detailed reflection on what is going on right now by the Palestinian Authority. And I want to emphasize two things. The first thing, that this is not a one-off or something that is peculiar to that's happening just this year. This is continuous policy that have accompanied the PA from its beginning. The issues of torture, abuse of activists, Palestinians, arrests outside the law, all of that has continued and is only on the increase. If the only thing that we can say about it, that the trends have increased throughout. And the second thing is that this is happening while the Palestinian people are still under a settler colonial occupation, where we are being denied our right for self-determination through brute force, the presence of the occupation, the repression. So on the one hand, we are having the Israeli occupation that is brutalizing the Palestinian population, practicing everything from field killings to beatings to arbitrary arrests and to slow violence, like cutting down on water supply for Palestinian communities that is happening all across the West Bank, while settlers are enjoying 7, 8, maybe sometimes 10 times as much water as their Palestinian neighbors. And this is all, just to emphasize it, this is all water, stolen Palestinian water from a land that is internationally recognized as being occupied. In this context, when we're talking about this kind of repression or systems of repression, we need to emphasize two things. The first one is that this does not happen in a vacuum. This kind of repression is actually being coordinated on the highest levels. There are security detachments from a number of countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, among several member states of the EU, that are doing the so-called security coordination or fostering the security coordination between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli security forces. And this security coordination does not look and does not intend and does not take into consideration the safety and the protection of the Palestinian population. So Palestinians in Tormosaya, when they were attacked a couple of weeks ago, or Palestinians in Hawara when a pogrom was practiced against them, or when even last week in Borin there were mass attacks on Palestinian property, olive trees and agricultural lands, the security coordination mechanism does not work to protect the Palestinian population. But this security coordination mechanism works on two things. The first thing is that the Palestinian security apparatus is holding the Palestinian community at a choke point under, I would say, the rule of the fear of repression against it, but especially whenever the Palestinian population is demanding, as Palestinian citizens have a right to, general elections in order to replace the corrupt Palestinian leadership democratically through general elections. So we see the security forces coming, arresting, and cracking down on Palestinians. And the second thing, that they are serving the interest of the occupation by keeping the Palestinian communities docile and Palestinian, any form of that would hamper the Israeli occupation also being repressed against, in the context that Palestinians do not have the right to self-defense. If we all here agree that Palestinians are human beings, then the most basic act of a human being is having the right of self-defense. So what the Palestinian communities are supposed to do? Who is supposed to protect them through this entire security apparatus, Palestinian security apparatus that has around anywhere between 25 and 35% of the general budget of the PA, and the security funding and coordination that is fostered between several European and the United States between the Palestinians and Israeli security apparatus. Who is supposed to protect the Palestinian population? It is evident and it's obvious that these mechanisms are not here to protect us, because violations against Palestinians, killings against Palestinians are done. And those, we would say that they largely fall out of the context. Today, there is actually a very interesting piece, a leak by the Times of Israel, that talks about one senior Palestinian official that was in the United States, that he was talking about the situation in the West Bank. And this will give a reflection on the mentality that he was presenting in the US, that the problem is Palestinian violence, instead of the problem being the systematic presence of the occupation and the dehumanization of Palestinians through these several systems of repression. And I think that in order to really understand or to really counteract what's happening on the ground, there needs to be two direct steps by human rights organizations. First, hold politicians accountable in Western countries. I'm talking about the EU countries, the United States, Canada, the UK, that are giving support to such a repressive security apparatus against the Palestinians. I put in the chat our report, Shrinking Space for Women Activists, where in the second section of it, we documented the grave violations committed by Palestinian security apparatus against activists that are still until today, since the killing, of course, of Nizar Bana, that still until today have not been punished. And on a second level, I would encourage everyone also to start not just only with the spreading of what documentation there is, but also to start on advocacy campaigns in order to hold the perpetrators of human rights violations accountable. And when we say perpetrators, it's not just the Palestinian security apparatus, but it's also the Israeli security apparatus and the funders and enablers of these human rights violations.